of a Mind Flayer colony, there is a being that is stronger than the others, that works as a right hand for the Elder Brain. It is stronger, it is faster, it has more psionic abilities. This week, we're talking about the Ulitharid. I'm your GM Isaiah, and welcome to Game Master's Arsenal. Do me a favor and roll initiative. Now, we're getting into it quick. We're continuing our series on the Illithids. We've gone through the base Mind Flayer, the Alhun, the mom we have liches at home, and we're working towards the Elder Brain and building your colony, but you kind of need to understand the different aspects of them. So, of course, before we get to the Elder Brain, we have to cover its predecessor, the Ulitharid, which I just spoiled a little bit about the Ulitharid. The Ulitharid is the one that eventually becomes the Elder Brain. Now, as far as the background of what an Ulitharid's in the colony is, so what it is it's a stronger Mind Flayer. It has more psionic potential. It either actively works against the Elder Brain to take over the colony, or it is the right hand of the Elder Brain. Now, and what that means is if you're going to fight a Mind Flayer colony and you're taking on the Elder Brain, odds of you coming up against an Ulitharid can be moderate. I wouldn't say every colony has an Ulitharid, but most would, because Ulitharids do leave the colony. So part of the life cycle of a colony is eventually an Ulitharid leaves the colony, either alone or takes Mind Flayers with it, takes a bunch of Mind Flayers with it to go form a new colony, and eventually, with the staff in its hand, turn itself into an Elder Brain. Now, what that means is, if you want to kill a new colony, you got to kill the Ulitharid before it becomes an Elder Brain. Because once it's an Elder Brain, it's a fully established colony. These Elder Brains are super powerful, super difficult to kill. When I say high-level adventures, I mean you're talking level 12, level 13. We're not talking epic-level adventures where you're 15 and beyond, but taking on an Elder Brain serves its own challenge. If you want to stop an Elder Brain in a Mind Flayer colony in its infancy, you kill the Ulitharid before it becomes an Elder Brain. Maybe it's still establishing itself. Maybe it's still building that. And of course, that means this thing has story implications. Now, when you're using this thing as an NPC, you have to remember that it's still a Mind Flayer. It still sees everybody as lesser than it. Maybe it sees the party as valuable slaves. Maybe the reason why it gives up information is because it has left the colony and wants to still take over the colony. So it's feeding them information so they can go take down the Elder Brain for it. Of course, there's this. Of course, these guys won't be acting as NPCs very much because of one of their abilities that we'll get to when we go into its stats. Is it has something called Psionic Hub, which means an Elder Brain can form a psychic link with it and anything near it, which means that while it's in the vicinity of a colony, it's not plotting very efficiently. Because it's not plotting very efficiently, it's not able to really do as much as far as undermining the Elder Brain. So, usually, that's why it leaves the colony before the Elder Brain realizes that, hey, this thing's gonna try to kill me, or as it's trying to kill it, because these things hate sharing leadership. They want to be the only one leading the colony. Of course, the Elder Brains see that, and as soon as they stop being their right hand and they might be considered a rival, they go, okay, we need to kill this thing before it usurps me. Which means there are some play in here. As far as story-wise, when you're dealing with an Ulitharid, you're dealing with a Mind Flayer colony in its infancy. It's either you're dealing with... It's an easy way. There's two different story types that are pretty easy to run with this. There's the party thinks they're going after a fully fledged Mind Flayer colony, and instead they find an Ulitharid, which is all right. You know, it's fun. it lets you throw weaker parties at Illithids, get them some knowledge of Mind Flayers in case you want them to be a bigger bad later on. But the other way is they're going after a colony in civil war as an Ulitharid is now attempting to usurp an Elder Brain. This adds an interesting little ripple in a dungeon when the party goes in and they realize these Mind Flayers are fighting each other. Do we take a side? Do we kill them all? Do we wait for somebody to win? Okay, what if whoever wins comes out stronger than they were? And lastly, the other big story thing is maybe the party finds out that there's an Ulitharid. They find out from somebody that an Ulitharid is about to conduct the ritual to become an Elder Brain. And so what they do is they go, okay, now it's a race against time to get through this infant Mind Flayer colony and kill the Ulitharid before it becomes an Elder Brain. And those are some of the story things that can run with it. And of course, there's many variations. When you're dealing with intelligent creatures, there's so many variations, but those are just some of the easier variations of how you could run an Ulitharid in your campaigns. Of course, the Ulitharid, as far as structure, is going to be the boss. He's the end of the dungeon. When you get there with the Ulitharid, you're like, oh, well, he's the end of the dungeon. He's the big bad behind the desk calling out instructions to his minions. He's got Mind Flayers with him. He's got Intellect Devourers with him, and he's just there. If he's defending himself from an attack on a colony, he's doing his own thing. Of course, like I said, he's the boss of the dungeon. If he's going to be the boss of the dungeon, you build him as the boss of the dungeon. Unfortunately, this is where the stat block comes in. His stat block, to me, isn't as impressive as it should be. He's a large aberration Mind Flayer, of course. I mean, he's a Mind Flayer. 15 AC, 127 hit points, movement speed of 30 feet, strength of 15, dex of 12, and constitution of 15, intelligence of 21, wiz of 19, charisma of 21. Intelligence, wisdom, charisma are his saving throws. Arcana, insight, perception, stealth are his skills. Dark vision and a passive perception of 18. Deep speech, undercommon, and telepathy. Pretty simple. He has a lot of abilities. This is a long stat block. We're getting to some of the more complicated stuff because he is CR9. As you get higher into the CR, things get more complicated. There are simple creatures, but they are more complicated. And the more complicated, you kind of need to learn how to use a little bit more. Now, the Ulitharid has psionics for his spellcasting with a DC of 17. He can detect thoughts, levitate, dominate monster, feeble mind, mass suggestion, plane shift, project image, scry, and telekinesis. Did you realize something about those spells? They are not damage spells. Crowd control and not infiltration. Crowd control and subterfuge. He's trying to gather information. That's what it does. Dominate monster, feeble mind, mass suggestion. That's all, boom, crowd control. Plane shift protects itself. Project image, protecting itself in a fight as well. Scrying, oh, now you're trying to figure out what to do about an enemy. You're trying to get the jump. Knowing is half the battle. The other half is extreme violence. Most of his battles, he will have his plan before he goes into the fight. Creature sense. It is aware of the presence of creatures within 2 miles of it that have an intelligence of 4 or higher. It knows the distance and direction to each creature, as well as each creature's intelligence score, but can't see anything else about it. A creature protected by a mind blank spell, non-detection spell, or similar magic can't be perceived in this manner. Most parties aren't sneaking up on this thing. Unless the whole party's got rings of mind shielding, they're not sneaking up on this thing. This thing knows where they are. They know that they're coming. Which means getting a jump on this thing is kind of hard, and that means getting a jump on the colony is kind of hard. It has magical resistance, psionic hub. If an Elder Brain establishes a psychic link with the Ulitharid, it can form a psychic link with anything other creature the Ulitharid can detect using its creature sense. Any link, it becomes a node. an elder brain might use it this way. When you're building your dungeon, you might put an Illitharid kind of on the edge there, a couple on the edge if it's got more than one. And what they're doing is they're acting as nodes to extend the range of the elder brain's ability. And of course, it can make a link beyond any distance as long as they're on the same plane. And if it's more than 5 miles away, it can end the link if it wants to. Which means while it's acting as a hub, maybe it's not ready to betray the elder brain, but it's using this as an opportunity to get away from the elder brain. And that's, of course, just how to play it more a realistic way. If this thing is trying to leave the colony, it would use its scouting ability to get away from it as a hub. Now, of course, these things being nodes for the elder brain is just kind of popping all over the place, making sure to keep the range of the elder brain at the highest that it can be. As far as its actions go, very simple, just like the other Mind Flayers. Tentacles, it has a +9 to hit, a little bit higher. 4d10 +5 psychic. If it is large or small, it is grappled. DC 17 intelligence saving throw or be stunned until the grapple ends. Extract brain, we've seen this before, 9 to hit. 1 incapacitated creature grappled by it. 10d10 piercing damage. If it hits 0, it's dead. And it extracts the brain and eats it. Mind Blast, everything has these, but this DC 17 intelligence saving throw for D12 +5 psychic damage and be stunned for 1 minute. The reason why I went through those real quick, we've seen these a number of times. Every Mind Flayer has these abilities. Tentacle, Extract Brain, Mind Blast. When you're talking about Mind Flayers, this thing does not change its stats very much. It has a few different spells. It gains that special psionic hub ability. It does a little bit more damage, hits a little bit harder. This thing is not that much different than a normal Mind Flayer. Because of that, because it is not different than a normal Mind Flayer, going into the fight, you might see that you're going to use it as a normal Mind Flayer. You got to consider that this thing has its own will. It does not. Its one job is not to protect the colony. It can have multiple jobs. It is not. It's a part of the hive mind, just like all the elder brains and Mind Flayers. It's part of the same hive mind, which is the colony that it's in. But it has its own agenda, and because of that, its behavior in battle will be different. So maybe when it gets into the fight, it's throwing wave after wave of Mind Flayer at the players, knowing they'll kill them and weaken the elder brain so that it can usurp them. Maybe it says, okay, I can't overthrow the elder brain. I can't run. I'm going to fall back to the elder brain and defend the elder brain. Of course, maybe it just says, this is my chance. I'm leaving. And the party catches this thing trying to escape. They might think of it as a monster trying to flee, not understanding that Mind Flayers don't do this. They defend their colony, and this thing's taking 3 or 4 Mind Flayers with it. An Ulitharid will rarely fight alone. This is where the difficulty of the Ulitharid comes in for a party and as a DM. An Ulitharid will rarely fight alone, which means players will be very hesitant to take on a group of Mind Flayers. He'll usually take 3 or 4 Mind Flayers with him, probably. If he's fleeing the colony, he'll probably have an intellect devourer with him, maybe 1, maybe 2, at least 1 other Mind Flayer with him. He's always going to have at least 1 other Mind Flayer, which means when your party is fighting the Ulitharid, they're in a lot of danger. Because a fight with an Ulitharid, like any Mind Flayer, there's a TPK risk. The Mind Blast, the Tentacles plus Extract Brain, they get the Wizard. The Wizard will probably pass his intelligence saving throw. Here's the issue. Unlike other Mind Flayers, this guy knows the creature's intelligence. It knows how smart the party is. It knows how susceptible each of them will be to its magic and to its abilities, which means it will target the one with the least intelligence first. Take them out of the fight as quickly as possible. Stun them. Extract brain. Kill them off. It can relay this information to the elder brain, to its other Mind Flayers. It can relay this information to its Mind Flayers and go, okay, that one. If you want to eat someone, eat that one. He will be the easiest to eat. Because his intelligence is lower. Of course, as soon as he sees somebody running in with an intelligence of 20, he goes, that thing's hyper intelligent. It's probably a wizard. Kill it. Which means this thing picks targets. This creature, it can easily pick targets. And mass suggestion is a brutal spell. I hope you guys have a counter charm. I hope you guys have a method of getting out of these things, because it's coming at you. You might walk into the door and it immediately casts mass suggestion of kneel or walk away or any number of things that it can suggest. Of course, suggestion has its limitations. As a DM, you should be reading that spell. Suggestion has the limitations. You can't do anything that would cause direct harm with it, which means getting them to surrender outright, probably not going to work. But you can get them to do a task. Get them to do a task in which they will leave them alone. Maybe they walk in, it casts mass suggestion, hits all of them, and it says, leave as quickly as you can. They're now running. Guess what? They just weakened the they've just weakened the Mind Flayer colony. This thing, like I said, it will not be at the edge. It could be at the edge of the Mind Flayer colony as a node, but odds are the Elder Brain only has one of these, one Ulitharid, which means it's not going to be at the edge of the Elder Brain colony. It's going to be near the center. It's going to be commanding alongside the Elder Brain, which means they're going to get close. They would have killed a lot. The Ulitharid might see this as a chance. Okay, I cast mass suggestion. They all got it. Go back to town. Go back to town and sleep. No direct harm. They just walk away. Everyone is now under the condition, I think it's for 8 hours, to leave. Just leave. And now this Ulitharid, it's an interesting thing because the party might go, why did it make us walk away? Why didn't it just try to kill us? And for the Ulitharid, it's going, great, they just weakened the colony. It's time for my Mind Flayers to rise up. It has its own agenda, and you should be enacting that as you play this out. I mean, it's another simple creature. It's another Mind Flayer. We've seen them before. We just want to go through each of them. Of course, next week we're going to be looking over the Elder Brain. And if you'd like us to do any giveaways here on Game Master's Arsenal, we can do D&D books. We can do minis. I love to paint. I could paint up some minis. That would be really cool. Hit that follow on Twitch. Keep an eye out for Game Master's Arsenal. And subscribe on YouTube. Do whatever you need to do. Hit the like, comment. Tell me, have you killed anybody with an Illitharid yet? That's all I got to know. I'm your GM, Isaiah. That's where we're going to leave it today.